Hey, how's your computer?
It's fine. My son's on it all the time now because I'm not home, and my wife just lets him get on it. And I was
Yeah.
immediately. I mean, they're not here, so I didn't take it out on anybody. I wasn't rude to anyone, but I was definitely upset. But then, my phone would go in and out, but it was working.
Yeah.
So then I tried my wife's computer, and then it just didn't work. And I realized it was just the internet. And somehow, after 2 times resetting it, it just magically started working. So hopefully, we don't go down mid-show.
Okay.
Anything before we get going? Or
Nothing really.
go?
Yeah, I'm good.
All right, then. Oh, where's my fucking phone? There it is. All right. Welcome to the Everyone's a Critic movie review podcast. I'm your co-host, Bob Zerl. With me, as always, is professional film critic Sean Patrick. Visit us at IHateCritics.net, Everyone's a Critic Podcast.com. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Our handle is CriticsPod. Subscribe to the show, rate and review the show at Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Alexa, all your podcatchers. If you do subscribe to the show, we will read your review on the air. And the next one to do so will get a copy of I Spit on Your Grave, the 4K Blu-ray that we did a bonus podcast on over at patreon.com/criticspod. Best way to support the podcast. You can also support the podcast by wearing our merch, which you can get at IHateCritics.net and clicking on the TeePublic link up in the right-hand corner. I think that's everything. All right. It's the first real weekend of the year.
Yeah.
We kind of did last week, so let's have some fun and share my screen, get everything up here.
Have some fun. Try not to think about all the dead celebrities.
Yeah, that's the weird one. It's like Betty White's gone, Peter
Bogdanovich.
Bogdanovich, Sidney Poitier, and Bob Saget's one that makes me the saddest. And it's only because he's probably younger.
Right.
And I grew up with Full House, but it was just kind of like, Jesus. I don't know.
Yeah. It's bizarre, right?
Legend's gone though, for sure.
Yeah. Well, the team behind Dirty Work is entirely gone.
Shit. Yeah. That's I don't know. We are gonna, with this episode, celebrate Peter Bogdanovich. Oh my God, why can't I say it? I can write it down. Bogdanovich, is that right?
Yeah. It's close enough.
Yeah. I know in my head it doesn't sound right. But we're gonna do Paper Moon as a classic to kind of remember him. Anyway, let's jump.
And I did post that on our Facebook. I did post that on our Facebook if anybody wants to share their opinions there. There's a post up on the Everyone's a Critic Facebook page.
Excellent. Let's go ahead and start with the new movies this week, and we'll start with C for Me.
C for Me stars Skylar Davenport as a woman who does house sitting for a living. She didn't before, but she started doing this after she lost her sight. She one of these people who lost their sight as an adult after she'd become a well-known skiing champion. And since then, she's just kind of drifted through life, picking up these odd jobs. And while she does that, she also occasionally will steal something from her rich clients to sell and pick up a couple extra bucks, just because it's a little bit of extra thrill that in her life that she's missing now that she doesn't have her life as a skier. The story picks up with her in this rather large upper New York State home by herself on a wintry night. There's she has a fight with her best friend who abandons her, so she downloads this app called C for Me, which is an app where they'll pair you with somebody who can help you, navigate wherever you are via a sort of a FaceTime app. She ends up in a situation, of course, where this rich house gets broken into by people who want to steal something out of it, and she's got to hide herself around and try not to get killed. There are some twists and turns in that story, some decisions she makes that are surprising, but for the most part, this is a pretty mundane thriller. Other than the fact that the lead actress Skylar Davenport is actually blind, which at the very least is some strong representation and gives some authenticity to the way the story plays out. That's certainly exciting, but this director, whose name escapes me at the moment, he's known in Canada for being a really kind of an out there thinker, a kind of an artist who takes a lot of chances, and he's made a very mundane movie out of this. Other than the fact that he has an actually blind lead, this is a very mundane, sort of straightforward thriller. And when I was looking into the reputation of the director, I kind of expected a little bit something more, and that left me pretty cold to this, considering that I've seen so many thrillers similar to this, if not as authentic. I think we've all seen a lot of movies that are like this: a large house in the middle of nowhere, people break in, and one person's got to hide from them. And there's some boldness in terms, I guess, of how gory some of the deaths are in the movie, but beyond that, it really doesn't stand out very much for me.
Have you seen anything this director has done before?
I believe this is his first feature. He's an artist by trade.
Gotcha. Live and learn.
Yeah.
I did not get to this one, but I did actually see a handful of movies this week, so I can participate more. But I don't even really have any questions.
Fair enough.
The 355.
The 355 stars Jessica Chastain as Mace, a CIA agent who is on the case when one of those world-ending MacGuffins goes missing, and the terrorists have it. She gets together with other agents from England, Lupita Nyong'o, and Germany, Diane Kruger, and Colombia, Penelope Cruz, and even China, big fan. And together they've got to recover the world-ending MacGuffin that can do anything. Again, this is just another mundane action movie where all the action is stuff we've seen before with the same kind of motivations we've seen before. I guess it's something that the actresses are, a wide range of backgrounds, and they're all women in the lead. That's something. But I mean, if you want an action movie like that, Gunpowder Milkshake came out last year and was a lot better than this. A lot more fun, a lot more over the top violent. Kate even is another good example of a badass female killer who, again, much more colorful and alive than this movie, which, directed by Simon Kinberg, is just kind of going through the motions. Kinberg, got to start writing a lot of big screenplays and has now directed this and a bad X-Men movie, and he's just not a particularly visually interesting director. And it's unfortunate because he's got, an amazing cast here, but they're all just kind of trapped in this very, again, this mundane action movie with a lot of set pieces we've seen before.
The good thing is all these actresses, specifically Jessica Chastain and Lupita Nyong'o, at least lately, tend to make good decisions, more or less. And it's okay to get a paycheck here every now and again. So I think they're going to be fine.
It's interesting. Both Penelope Cruz and Jessica Chastain could be Oscar nominees by next month. So it's kind of interesting to see them working together here.
Didn't that happen one year with like Jamie Foxx and somebody else? And I think Jamie Foxx won, and then they ended up being like one of the worst movies ever came out. Space movie after Ray. Yeah. I can't remember the name of it.
Oh, God.
I want to say Jessica Biel was in it or something like that.
Oh, God. It sounds familiar, yeah.
Was
that Wing Commander?
I don't even know.
Was Jamie Foxx in Wing Commander?
I don't even know if it was Jessica Biel that was in it. I really can't remember what it was. I just remember they were doing ads for it during the Oscars, and then it ended up being terrible.
Yeah.
And I feel like there was 2 Oscar winners in it.
at the very least, this isn't like Norbit levels of embarrassing. Like this is it's much more mundane
Forgettable. Yeah.
and forgettable. Yeah, like a lot of cliches. Like there's this crowded marketplace in a for foreign country, and everybody's doing. Did he hand off the MacGuffin thing to that guy? Follow that guy, I'll follow that guy, and then we'll have a fight scene.
Has there been a movie that's called it the MacGuffin yet?
I don't think so. Yeah, I had a lot of fun with that term in my review. The ultimate world-ending MacGuffin thing.
No, my brother always uses that phrase when he talks about movies.
Yeah.
MacGuffin is here. I'm just like, shut up. All right, let's move on to the Tender Bar.
The Tender Bar stars Ben Affleck and Ty Sheridan, the story of a young boy who moves to Long Island with his mom. Excuse me, Long Island. That's how you have to say it. Long Island. They moved to Long Island to live with their grandfather, Christopher Lloyd. And he ends up, of course, his uncle Charlie also lives there. It's the house is just kind of overflowing with people. And he falls in with his uncle Charlie a little bit, who becomes kind of a father figure to him because his own father is absent. He's in the most authentic piece of this movie, he's a radio DJ who's constantly moving from state to state to avoid the police. I know that guy.
No, a couple of them.
Exactly. I once did a remote broadcast where I was the engineer back at the station, and the station was in Iowa, but he was in Illinois for the remote. And he's like, I'm not supposed to be in this state. Got a couple warrants out for me. So yeah, that guy, totally authentic. But the rest of the movie is incredibly broad, in my opinion, and especially, and unfortunately, it's Ben Affleck, whose performance is incredibly broad to the point of cringe-inducing at times. Like the character is just so much, just this over-the-top thing that actors like to do. A lot of actorly business, a lot of actorly monologuing and posing, and again that New York Long Island accent that occasionally slips over into his Boston accent a little bit. It's like you can just sense that actors love working with George Clooney because he's an actor and he knows that actors like to do actor stuff, and he lets actors do actor stuff. And that can be good, like in Confessions of a Dangerous Mind. Letting Sam Rockwell just kind of go nuts was kind of what that movie needed in terms of its energy. But then you have something like Suburbicon, where Matt Damon's doing this super intense performance in what is otherwise a seemingly comic movie, and it doesn't make any sense. And here, Affleck's character makes sense, but it's just so over the top. It's so broad, and he's so much more compelling and charismatic than Ty Sheridan. Ty Sheridan is the lead in this movie, and I can't tell you anything his character did in this movie because Affleck is like over in the corner just waving his arms for your attention. Like he's not stealing scenes. He's picked them up and taken them with him, and the movie just suffers for that. He's so much bigger and broader than Sheridan, who's delivering this very straightforward performance. On top of which he's stuck with this voiceover throughout the entire movie. He's got to try and explain and fill in all the cracks of the story, and that's incredibly boring.
Yeah,
While Affleck gets to do all the fun stuff.
And if you look at the poster, if you're watching this on YouTube, Ben Affleck's name is first. The character, the lead character, is really played by three people. You got the voiceover and what's his name from Office Space, Ron Livingston. Ty Sheridan plays him as a college kid, and then Daniel Ranieri or something like that. Is that his name as the kid? Who a large chunk of the movie is the kid. So it's definitely it's easy to steal this movie. Ben Affleck's getting nominated for awards, is he not, for this?
Some people really like the performance, but like I always say, though, a lot of people confuse the most acting for the best acting. He's definitely doing the most acting. This is a lot of acting. It's very in your face acting. And I think there's a lot of people who, like I said, they mistake that for the best acting, and it's not. I would refer, as I always do, to Bradley lately, since I saw it. I'll refer to Nightmare Alley again, where Bradley Cooper is not doing the most acting. He's doing the absolute best acting of the planet. He's just absolutely killing that role and not doing anything to take you out of the magic of it. Whereas here, you kind of feel like you're watching the Ben Affleck show. Like it's a borderline sitcomic, the levels to which he's taking this character.
I didn't mind the performance. I actually thought it was pretty good. At the same time, I knew your opinion of it, so maybe I was prepared for it, and it just seemed to be more natural. I mean, I knew he had an accent. I know it was an accent. You're doing a little bit you're definitely acting. But it seemed to flow better for me. And
yeah.
At the same time, the rest of your criticism I agree with is that it is the Ben Affleck show. Even if you think he's good, the movie, you want to watch that character more than you want to watch the main character.
Yeah, the main character is rendered completely boring just by comparison.
Yeah, and the story, the whole arc is just like, oh, you want to be a writer? Okay. I mean, it's not, I mean, there is things he overcomes, but it's not, I don't know, it's just not that great. It's kind of boring, and it took me 2 times to get through it.
Yeah.
It's just not, it's at best, I'd say, okay. There's nothing wrong with it per se. It's just kind of there. And George Clooney's done that a couple times for me,
Yeah.
That Men Who Stare at Goats should have been amazing. I'm just kind of
yeah. With that premise, that should have been incredible.
And I couldn't tell you anything about it.
Botched it completely.
Yeah.
This movie here kind of, if you want a great movie about a writer, Wonder Boys is the go-to. That's the go-to movie about a writer. That's an actual movie about a guy who's writing something, and that's my top tier. And if you're going to do something, you better find a way to be half as good as that. And this is half as good as that.
Well, and there's all these people live at home with the grandfather, Christopher Lloyd.
Yeah.
So you got these fairly decent actors all around a table, and all you're watching is Ben Affleck talk to the kid. You could have had a great, what is the word? When you have the whole cast, a whole scene with everybody in the cast, and you just kind of wasted it a couple different times on just, Ben Affleck handed the kid $20, and all these actors are great actors, and that would be nice to see an ensemble, like a more ensemble scene. Uh-huh. And they definitely let that go a couple times. And in the end, it was just kind of like, I get the point. I just don't care about the point. And, I'm happy for you that you were successful, but I didn't need to watch your movie.
Yeah, no. I think part of it comes down to just George Clooney is incredibly, charitable to actors, and I think he lets actors do what they want. I think he's letting Lily Rabe do what she wants, but she doesn't get as much screen time. She's doing as big and broad as Affleck is. She's mostly off screen doing it. When she's on screen, she's all over the top, just New York, and the same as Affleck, but she doesn't have nearly as much screen time. It just the Ty Sheridan character the kid can't keep up with what Affleck's doing. He's just so different. He stands out so much out of this that somebody needed to step in and either dial back that character a little bit or
reroute the story.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you want to watch it, it's on Amazon for free. American Siege. Why in the hell did you watch this?
Because I can't tear my eyes away from the train wreck that is Bruce Willis. I am fascinated by this man in his late period career. I had a lengthy conversation about this on online about Bruce Willis and his sleepwalk period, and people were like, "Oh, what did they just blackball him to these low rent movies?" And I'm like, no, he chose this. Like, he gets paid $2, $3, $4 million. The movie is going to make $10 million in just overseas sales alone, so it's automatically going to make money. So this is just basically a scheme. Like, he should be getting arrested for this.
Well, yeah.
He
On top
worked
of that,
one day on this movie, one day, and the entire time you can see him either getting his lines in an IFB in his ear, or looking off to the side where you can play a little drinking game where Bruce Willis is reading cue cards of his lines.
oh, so he's not even really the star of the movie.
He is the star of the movie. But it's an ensemble piece because he's only there for a day, and you can only get so many scenes in a day. So
right,
you end up.
Well, and the best part for him is he walks in and goes, "Yeah, we're not doing that. That's you're going to cut it anyway, so let's not even shoot it." And I know Kevin Smith made a lot of that public, right. And other people have come forward since then and explained how he acts on set. But yeah, he tells you what he's basically in charge when he's there. Yeah. So,
well, and the thing is that now he's working with a group of people now who basically they're his team. They do what he tells you. They do what he says. Like he's worked with this director a couple times now. He's got his guys in the cast. He's got his writers. Like, this is his thing, and yet even with it being his thing, he's on set for a day and gone.
How is that fun?
I don't like. I mean, if you got $4 million to do something for a day, wouldn't you?
Oh, yes, but after I've had so many millions of dollars, at some point it's just like, unless he's in that much financial trouble, I can't imagine he is.
I don't know,
but
he only has to work a day. He doesn't have to learn his lines. I'm sure he seems very happy.
And I guess it's one thing if it was just this, but it's like. There's probably 20 movies for every movie we talk about that he does.
Yeah.
So he's doing this all the time, which is more of why I'm like, at some point I just be like, yeah, I don't need to do that one. I don't.
He has no feel. He doesn't care. I think this scheme, whatever it is, whatever thing he's got going on in Europe or wherever it is that he's selling these movies to, Slovakia, it's some sort of tax shelter of some sort. There's some sort of awful, evil scheme going on here. I don't know what it is, but one of these years, we're going to find out. Somebody's going to write a book about this and reveal exactly what the tax scheme is that keeps these movies getting made and him getting paid for a day's work.
Yeah. Well, is there anything about the movie we need to talk about, or is you pretty much sum it all up?
It's terrible. It's unwatchable. It's pointless nonsense. He got his friends jobs on. That's pretty much it.
I guess if you're getting your friends money, that's a little different.
Well, it's his friends, but his friend is like Janet Gretzky and her son, like as if they don't already have a lot of money.
Yeah, fair point.
But he did get Timothy V. Murphy, I guess, an above the line credit. So good for him.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because the world is going crazy for Timothy V. Murphy. Everybody knows that guy.
I'm amazed Bruce Willis allowed for his name to be to the left. I mean, Bruce Willis is still the first face. Timothy
V. Murphy isn't even the second lead in this movie. He's the lead. Jesus. Like, he's kind of he's the villain, but like there's a character played by Rob Goff who has more screen time than anybody else. And then you have Trevor Gretzky in there and Janet Gretzky, and it's like this guy's maybe got the fifth most lines of the movie.
It sounds like they needed Ben Affleck to come in and draw some attention this way. All right, I've had enough. Let's move on to the documentary American Gadfly. I did watch this one.
American Gadfly is a documentary about a group of teenagers who were just kind of naive and brilliant enough to think, what if we got somebody to run for president? They were just kind of didn't know how to do it, and so they just went ahead and did it. And what they did was they found a guy named Mike Gravel, who was a senator from Alaska, relatively famous in the late 60s, early 70s, who ran for president in 2008 and made a kind of a splash, so to speak, with his very strange approach to campaigning. But he was actually, this incredible progressive liberal Democrat, admired by a number of different people because he's a very principled guy whose main thing is no war ever. And these kids, being progressives themselves, saw somebody that they could relate to, and they get a hold of him, they pitch him their idea, and he goes for it. And what happens from there is this amazing campaign where these kids, a group of teenagers, nearly got a presidential candidate onto the main stage at one of the biggest debates of the 2020 election cycle. It obviously didn't happen because money and politics and the Democratic Party, having chosen Joe Biden 2 years prior to that election, it didn't happen. But the fact that they did so well and they got so much attention, and their social media game was so good that they nearly upended the entire political process. And for a time, they had a campaign that was really something. And this documentary does a great job of capturing the excitement and the almost ludicrousness of a group of kids running a presidential campaign.
Yeah, it was interesting, if nothing else. I mean, part of me is like, thank God they didn't do more because Trump would still be president. But only
it would have been fun to watch on social media.
Yes, it would have been fun to watch on social media. But I mean, it was interesting for them to kind of watch the naivete turn into realism, and then them, as they got further and further along, kind of understanding how it works, Yeah. And for better or worse, I don't know what the right answer is, but I don't know. The whole thing was, I have a hard time. I don't know. Politics are so frustrating anymore. You can't go anywhere without seeing it.
Yeah.
And it's just not as interesting to watch as it would have been a couple of years ago, or maybe even 6, 7, 8 years ago, probably to COVID and everything else that's happened, and everything's political. But their story is interesting. And it's just cool how they did it and how easily they got access to certain things. Was just very neat. I don't know how excited it makes me for the future. But because it's not them themselves they were good guys. It's just more of the whole process is just kind of like, this is only going to get worse. I don't know how it gets better. And maybe I'm just maybe I just am too pessimistic, but that's kind of the impression I got from this movie. I mean, they couldn't get him on stage, and they technically did enough to get him there.
They did.
So that's kind of scary, but at the same time, I don't know.
What else is scary is that we didn't really get this story until now. Like at the time, obviously, I think a lot of people saw what was happening with this. Like I kind of caught it in the side eye a little bit. Like what's this Mike Gravel stuff? Like there were a lot of people who did like kind of caught it on the side, but what you don't get is how pretty incredible Mike Gravel is and was, and obviously he's passed on now, but he was a legit politician and an even more legit presidential candidate than anybody gave him credit for. And at the same time, so were people like, Andrew Yang and that, I can't remember her name now, the female, she was running for president on the Democratic side. She was completely dismissed as this crackpot weirdo who actually did get on but she seems like a really good person and a really genuine person. And and that's what you get when you take the media filter off of it. When you're not hearing this from MSNBC and when you're not hearing this from the mainstream media, suddenly you actually can see somebody and they seem actually relatively sane and thoughtful. That was kind of revealing in a way. Say what you will about Andrew Yang or that woman who, again, I wish I remembered her name now.
I know because we're talking about her, I can't think of it, but I know. And it's
she was pivotal in nearly getting Mike Gravel on the stage that night. But it's incredible, really, when you look at it from that perspective, and then you look at it from the cynical perspective of how money in the Democratic Party sort of moved the goalposts to keep them away from it, to keep them out of it. That really was just kind of that shittiness of modern politics sneaking in there. But these guys don't get cynical about it. That's what I really was excited about, is that these kids, as hard as it was, they seemed very optimistic even in the end, that look what we did here and look what we can possibly do in the future. And I like that aspect of the documentary. I think there's something to still be heard from these kids, who are actually still to this day, I believe, running what they call the Gravel Institute, which is dedicated to the principles that they put forward in the campaign.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's an interesting watch, and these kids are good kids. And you're right, it was cool to, when these candidates are on TV, they're characters and not even people. I mean, even all politicians are characters. Everything you see is well thought out, is for the most part. And if it wasn't well thought out, you see that as a gaffe and then make a big deal about it. But this movie does pull those, especially Andrew Yang and or whatever her name was. It's so embarrassing.
Yeah,
it's like a name we should all know, and everybody's sitting there listening, yelling it back at us. But you get a more human version of them. Even Bernie Sanders, he's not in it for very much, but you get a little bit of like a human interaction with him and Mike Gravel backstage later on in the movie, which was very cool. And that's what's needed in politics, is more of that human element,
Right. I mean, when you hear them, when you see these people at the debates, and you've got people from CNN or MSNBC or Fox News just going, what are you even doing here? Like, you're just asking them bizarre questions and treating, somebody says, well, I think, universal health care is a good thing, and everybody scoffs at them. It's like, well, why aren't you asking how they'll do it? Like, why aren't you asking? They just immediately dismiss the idea of universal health care or these big progressive ideas. They just dismiss them automatically. The mainstream media does, and don't even give anybody the chance. They go immediately back to the centrist guy who says that's not possible, and we're not going to waste our time with that. And then you elect Joe Biden, which again, yeah. We couldn't have the other guy. So, yeah.
Right. And that, I mean, that's the other part of me, is it's like, what do you do? Do you go for it? Do you rage against the machine and go all the way? Or do you do the best you can and not let the other guy win? Is even worse, which I don't know. At some point, I think there's going to be 4 parties here pretty quick.
I want to get rid of parties. The parties just need to go away completely.
I want to get rid of debates. All sorts of things need to be.
Just get them gone. The parties are antiquated. They're out of date. They're meaningless. And all they do is just divide the country in half and to continue to not let anything get done.
Right. Because people look at it as, this is who I am. And if you're called the other one, it's an insult. It's not even, some people don't even realize what they are. They just vote a certain way without, I don't know. The whole thing is frustrating, but
yeah.
These movies used to be really fun for me, and they're just not as fun anymore. So, didn't make it not interesting. It just wasn't as fun as it would have been maybe 8 years ago. Maybe I'm just getting old and cranky too. I don't know. King Car
is a Brazilian sci-fi movie about a young boy who was born in the back of one of his father's taxis and develops a bond with the car. He can actually speak to the car, and the car can speak back to him. And as he grows up, he develops this relationship with this car. They become very close friends, and the car is in an accident saving the kid's life. Unfortunately, that accident nearly kills the car and does kill the boy's mom, and leads the boy to kind of reject cars for some time. As he grows up, he goes as far to abandon his father's taxi business in favor of learning about agriculture and agronomy and sustainability instead of learning about cars and driving. Meanwhile, his father is facing a situation where the Brazilian government is imposing a law that says you can't have a car on the street that is older than 15 years because they want cars updated to standards for to help the environment. So the boy, while his dad has a heart attack basically because of this, he turns to his uncle Z, who's this weird uncle, who's this weird genius, and has him turn this car into a new car. Let's take this old car and upcycle it into a new car. And he actually tells him how to teach it to speak and to let it speak to other people. And it becomes this cult figure where it can speak to other cars and it draws those people with their cars into this cult, this sort of king car cult. Naturally, this all goes to the car's head and it starts to turn evil. Really weird, fun, exciting, strange, beautiful movie. I was blown away by this movie in many ways. It's bold, it's strange, it's unexpected. There's a character who played by Jules Elting, who's this artist. And I was talking about her in my review, and I said she's much like Maud Lebowski. Her art, or their art, is seen as very vaginal. I'll just leave it at that for you to discover yourself. There's some bold sexuality in the movie that definitely will have some people talking, but it's really about, that's really what it comes down to, is the obsession, to the point of even sexualizing our fetishistic obsession with vehicles and cars, and our desire to not let go of our car or change change how we approach the car. We want our cars to stay the same, but also be perfect in our eyes forever. And that obsession with car culture is kind of fascinating, and it's very much sent up in a very darkly comic way in this movie. It's not for everybody. Not everybody's going to like this. A lot of people are going to be really turned off by this, but again, when I've sat through movies like the 355 and C for Me, which are these very mundane, familiar plots, I want the movie where somebody tries to fuck a car. Give me that one. I'll take it.
All right, I have questions, but I'm going to change the batteries, and I'll be right back. Hold on one second.
I say tries.
Okay, we're back.
You had questions. Okay.
Yeah, well, you ended it with, I want to see movies where they fuck a car. No, you didn't say that. But after, I'm screwing you up. People, rewind 30 seconds and listen to it again. But, so what happens in this movie? Or is it just more you need to discover it for yourself?
I think you need to see for yourself exactly what I'm talking about. I don't want to give away all of the fun of this movie. It's just it's a very weird, very exciting, very strange movie that is, again, not for everybody.
Like, is this as weird and exciting as like Mandy or Night of the Virgin, or?
It's definitely in their vein. I don't think it goes quite far enough in terms of being as outlandish as it could be, but it definitely goes to places that are, wow. It goes places for sure. It's also sometimes it's foreign. It's Brazilian, so it's some people have a hard time with subtitles. It's funny. I actually interviewed the co-writers and the director of this movie, and they were talking about how science fiction isn't very big in Brazil. Like, it's not something that audiences there go for. And this week and next week, I'm reviewing a Brazilian sci-fi movie. It's the most watched genre of the year so far for me.
That's funny. Yeah, I almost watched it. I just didn't have a moment where I could sit down and, like, I had to watch it while doing something else. Everything I watched this week, I had something else going on. And because it's foreign and I had to pay more closer attention to it, I just didn't have the opportunity. But this is on the list.
I do recommend it. It is something that sticks with you after you see it. That's for sure.
What I was forced to watch, because that's the only thing left, was Rucker.
Rucker.
Boring serial killer movie ever made.
Right. Right. Absolutely. Like these actors, I'm sorry that these are two just not particularly interesting actors. The story here is about a trucker who kills people in the back of his truck and buries them in freshly dug graves at cemeteries. And uh, he's doing it. He's killing women who look like his ex-wife, and he's being filmed for this documentary. And the documentarian is at first off screen, but she's eventually brought in front of the camera, and she becomes very interested in the killing and then part of the killing. And they have a secret together that gets revealed, which is played very strangely because were they sleeping together? Are they related? I don't know. The movie is too chaotic and uninteresting. The violence, I get that there's supposed to be like a horror comedy thing here happening with the violence being so mundane. Like he'll literally just reach over and slice a woman's neck and she'll just bleed everywhere, and there's no reaction from anyone. And I guess that's supposed to be like a sort of a comic take on the idea. Like it's just like killing is just so mundane to these people that they don't even have any reaction to so much blood and someone dying in front of them. But none of it lands. None of it's like darkly comic. It's some of it is kind of weird, but not in a very interesting way. And like I said, the lead performances are very bland.
Yeah, it's none of it's terrifying. Like I guess the movie would try to compare it to would be like Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer.
Yeah.
And it's not that at all.
No.
That movie is, with stuff not happening, there's terrifying moments in that movie, just kind of like, oh my God, these people exist. Here it's just kind of like,
yeah, Michael Rooker is so unpredictable and so terrifying in his unpredictability that every scene of Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer feels like it's charged, and I didn't feel any of that charge in this movie.
No, I mean, it made me want them to keep going back to the scenes where they had co-stars.
You wanted more Corey Taylor?
Well, he was like one of the best things in the movie, and he's not an actor. That's sad. And it was like, why is he even here?
Yeah.
But they would on occasion they'd go back to truck stops and run into other truckers, and those were they weren't even that interesting. Just everything else was so boring that I would have rather watched those scenes for however long this movie is. And I don't know.
I thought this movie was going to gain some kind of weird, outlandish, excitement that, and then there's a scene late where she's like showing a videotape of her documentary, and I thought like there's this woman who is on a bed, and I thought, is that him? Is he dressed up as a woman? Like, is he dressed up as this wife, Darlene? Like, that's kind of interesting. And then, no, that's not what's happening. It's just her dying, very uninterestingly.
Yeah, I couldn't even tell you what you said. My assumption was they were related. But even then, I couldn't tell you much more about it. I couldn't tell you why he's doing it. I remember how it ends, I guess. But even that was just kind of like, okay. Yeah. I mean, there's really nothing about it that. The reason serial killers are so terrifying is because they're real people hiding within our everyday lives, and how do they get away with it? Why do they do it? What makes them act like that? How are they normal one day and then crazy another day? There's so many questions, and this movie doesn't address any of them.
No, it doesn't.
It's just a piece of shit. So yeah, that's Rucker. Our undisputed classic is Peter Bogdanovich. I said it right, I think. This movie, Paper Moon.
Paper Moon stars Ryan O'Neal and his real-life daughter, Tatum O'Neal, the story of a con artist who ends up assigned to take this young girl who was the daughter of a woman he may have slept with. He may even be this girl's father, maybe. He gets assigned to take her to another home in Missouri somewhere and drop her off there. But of course, things conspire to make that not happen, and they end up going on the road together and pulling scams together. Early on, it's he's got this really clever Bible scam where he looks up the obituaries of people who have recently passed and shows up at their house and says, "Oh, well, your late husband bought you this Bible and it has your name in it." Yeah, he really went all out, and she kind of ups that game a little bit in a very funny way. And along the way, they pick up a character played by Madeline Kahn, who is a sideshow performer who kind of a con artist in her own right, who takes men for money and leaves them. And Tatum O'Neal develops a rivalry with her that she wants to get rid of her so she doesn't keep taking all of his money. And really this movie is very good. It's very good. It's not like entirely memorable, but it like not like one of the great all-time classics or anything, but I like the title Paper Moon, and it's about the idea of something that looks real but isn't, like this father and daughter who they look like father and daughter. They may or may not be father and daughter, but it's all just it's telling you. It's like it's a perfect metaphor. Like it's a fake moon in a fake sky, as the Ella Fitzgerald song puts it. But if you believe in it enough, it becomes real. And for one of them at least, it kind of becomes real, and maybe for both of them it kind of does. I loved their chemistry. Obviously, they're father and daughter, so that certainly does make sense. But she really is ahead of her time. At 9 years old, I mean, I would never have thought for sure. Like Anna Paquin, I wasn't entirely sold on the idea of her winning the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress. Not entirely, but I kind of bought this a little bit more.
Yeah. I was just going to say maybe Anna Paquin, and I didn't even know who won what, but this might be the best child performance I've ever seen, and throwing maybe Anna Paquin from the piano, but this is more of a lead role than that was.
Yeah. She's got a lot. She is on camera a lot. She's got a lot to do.
Far and away the best thing about the movie.
Yeah.
And that's unfair because she's a kid, and there's a little bit of a bite, that makes it, the bar is lower for her. And you just automatically like kids. And Ryan O'Neal has to do a lot of the heavy lifting because of that. But I just thought she was fantastic in it. It was just like really, really good. Like this is better than Bonnie and Clyde.
Yeah, I would take this over that. Yeah.
And maybe we're in the minority. Again, this is somewhat forgettable, I guess, other than her performance, but it's definitely watchable.
Yeah.
I was pleasantly surprised, and
Bogdanovich, at the very least, he doesn't make movies that other people make. There's nothing typical, about this or the Last Picture Show. That movie has a love triangle, but it never feels like your typical love triangle. Right. It feels so much more authentic than that. And this one is just a story that I think, who would ever tell a story like this? And what's going to be the point? And the point ends up being that even something that may not be real can feel real if you believe in it enough. And they're kind of suckers for each other in a way that's kind of exciting. And I didn't know if I was going to enjoy the movie, as it was early on. I wasn't connecting with it. And then as I kind of went along, and it took actually listening to the Ella Fitzgerald song after the movie and going, you know what? Yeah, that does fit. Like that is a complete story. And I do buy into these characters even more than I thought I did.
Yeah. And then just the idea of the kid who who joins the swindler without, you're not ready for it. And it just comes out of nowhere. That's been done since then. Maybe it's been done before, but I don't know. Every reference I had, granted, I was born after this movie came out, so I suppose I don't know what the first movie to do it was, but this definitely looks like a movie that's been stolen from that aspect of it, which I think is very cool. Again, watchable, very, very watchable. It's free on Amazon right now if you want to watch it. I'd say it's worth it. It's not a big deal if you don't see it, but for Tatum O'Neal's performance alone, I'd recommend it.
It's definitely, for her, that is a piece of Hollywood history where a 9-year-old is delivering the best performance of the year she's performing.
Well, yeah, and I mean, if you're into movies like Home Alone or whatnot, this is better. Like, she's way better than that. And I'm not saying anything bad about Home Alone. That movie works for what it is. But this is definitely a better kid movie performance type thing. So just really impressive. Yeah. What else to say?
Peter Bogdanovich, of course, passed away, 83 years old, I believe he was. A friend of, a longtime friend of Welles, Orson Welles, and his protege in many ways, and learned a lot about direction from him, but never made a movie like Orson Welles made. He definitely always went his own way, and just a fascinating, a life. When you look back at what he's done and the strange places he pops up. The only time I've ever written about Peter Bogdanovich was a movie called Los Angeles Overnight, where he plays just a random therapist character who just shows up for a couple of scenes and is really interesting and then gone. And nobody's ever heard of that movie, but Peter Bogdanovich was in it. And then you've got that whole, like the whole Star 80 thing. He was involved. He was in the middle of that whole Star 80 situation. And when you look back on how tragic that ended up being, it changed his entire life, changed the trajectory of his career. He stopped working for a long time after that happened. And really, and that moment changes Hollywood history in a strange way, because we don't know what Peter Bogdanovich would have done during the 80s, because he basically just kind of walked away for a while.
What is the Star 80 thing? I'm vaguely familiar with it, but since we have a little time, we're practically done.
Well, there was this Playboy model who was a very young woman who came to Hollywood, became very famous very quickly. She had this boyfriend. In the movie, he's played by Eric Roberts. It was the Academy Award nominated performance of Eric Roberts in Star 80. And Peter Bogdanovich fell in love with her and wanted to, take her away and marry her, and they were going to be together. I think he left his wife for her, in fact, and then she was murdered. I mean, just brutally murdered by this guy. Her boyfriend / manager just brutally killed her and snuffed out her life at a very young age, and it just destroyed Bogdanovich.
I didn't realize that was I mean, I've seen the movie. I just assumed maybe he directed it or something like that. Apparently, it was about him. All right, I learn something new every day.
It's weird, right?
Yeah, it's very. That's Then he pops up later on as a regular on The Sopranos.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was
quite a life.
Yeah.
I mean, we both loved the Last Picture Show when we talked about that. That was such a great thing. There's kind of a few of his other movies I would like to check out.
Yeah, absolutely. Did he direct the sequel, or was that somebody else?
I don't remember now off the top of my head.
I know we really wanted to see it, but then we just couldn't find it, or was nowhere to be found anywhere.
The Playboy Playmate, by the way, was a woman by the name of Dorothy Stratton. That was the woman who was, she was Playboy Playmate of the Month, August 1979, and Playmate of the Year in 1980. And just not exactly the kind of person you would see, with a guy like Peter Bogdanovich. But yeah, so weird.
Yeah, I didn't realize that was him. In 1992, we have Cuffs. I've never seen that. Is it any good?
You never seen Cuffs? Cuffs is Christian Slater, his follow-up role to Pump Up the Volume. He plays a teenager who becomes a cop. And this is actually something that could sort of happen in San Francisco at this time. I didn't know this. I read this in a review in the Washington Post, where they're talking about how in San Francisco, they had these things where they had a citizen police force in a way where districts were divided up and you could buy a district and be that district's police officer. So when this guy, Charlie Cuff's brother, gets killed, he inherits his district and becomes like this teenage police officer. And he sets about trying to solve his brother's murder.
That's funny.
it's a terrible movie, but I loved Christian Slater. I was obsessed with Christian Slater back in the early 90s. He was my hero, after Pump Up the Volume and this movie. He was just so cool that I think I watched Cuffs like a dozen times when it was on cable after that. And I can look back on it now and see like it's a terrible movie, but at the time it was like the epitome of cool. He does that cool Christian Slater thing where he turns and he talks to the camera. It's like, I'm friends with Christian Slater.
Christian Slater is like Mark Paul Gosselaar meets Jack Nicholson. I mean, that's a very wide range.
It's perfectly accurate. Zach Morris, police officer.
Zach McMurphy. Anyway,
we just made a better movie.
We made a movie. We should probably push that to Christian Slater now. For the Cuckoo's Nest, but a grown-up Zach Morris.
It's set today, but he's got one of those big brick cell phones, and he's still dressed in his 90s gear.
He can call timeout.
This has gone off the rails.
All right, the other one, let's get us back on the rails. What practically should have been a TV movie, The Hand That Rocks the Cradle.
Huge hit at the time.
Huge hit at the time, but when you watch it, it's like a TV movie.
I haven't watched it in a long time, but it was influential. Like the movies that have been made since then seem to ape this movie.
Oh, yeah.
like a lot of them have this idea of this, this, who are you letting watch your children? Who is this temptress in your home? That kind of thing. And that's been played out in a number of movies since this. Not to say that this was a good movie that was influential, but it was influential.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I've seen this one a million times. I don't know why, but
it was from 92 to 96. This movie was on TV every day somewhere. Because it was I think Nathan Raymond actually may have dubbed this one of his Forgot Busters. It was a big hit. It was number one for a couple of weeks. Then people just it fell off the face of the earth sometime in the mid 90s.
Yeah, I mean, people talked about it at the time, but
yeah. Well, it's one of those movies. It was one of those Fatal Attraction. What would you do?
Right.
Movies.
Yeah, I mean, Basic Instinct. But this doesn't have the life that those two did.
No, because I love Rebecca De Mornay, but she's not nearly as memorable as Sharon Stone. Say what you will about Sharon Stone, she was fucking memorable.
Right.
You don't forget her in Basic Instinct. She won't let you.
No. Yeah.
But Rebecca De Mornay doesn't have that kind of presence, unfortunately.
And then there was one other movie, but I forgot to write it down.
Free Jack. How could you forget Free Jack? It's the one I watched this week.
Thank you for watching it, because I forgot about it. What is it?
You don't remember Free Jack? Oh, man. Free Jack stars Emilio Estevez as a race car driver who is pulled out of his race car just as it's about to crash and explode into a million pieces. He is pulled 17 years into the future because a very rich man wants to take his consciousness and put it in Christian Slater's body. And so they call these guys who they do this to free jacks. So rich guys can use this technology to go back in time to these places where they know somebody who they are interested in purchasing is going to die, and they rip them out of that space in the last second and into the future, and then they inject their consciousness into that guy. Unfortunately for them, Emilio Estevez proves a little bit tougher than others. He doesn't go to sleep. He wakes up in the middle of the process and escapes and goes out into the world and hides while Mick Jagger goes looking for him as a bounty hunter. He ends up going back to his girlfriend, Renee Russo, who kind of tries to help him, but also doesn't believe it's him because she hasn't seen him in 17 years. And the last time she saw him, he was in a million pieces on the ground. So she's kind of shocked to see him. Anthony Hopkins is the big bad in this movie. It's bad, but there are a lot of people who really love this movie. There's a kind of a Free Jack cult, if you will. With the 20th anniversary of this movie, 25th anniversary of this movie came out, people were writing things about how Free Jack was a glimpse of the future somehow. I'm not sure, but I don't see that in any way. It was ahead of its time. How was this ahead of its time? You can't place your consciousness in somebody else's body.
Yeah.
Did it precede Avatar? What are you talking about? Nobody remembers how you got into Avatar. I don't know why I brought up Avatar. Nobody remembers that.
No, I don't.
People remember Free Jack better than they remember Avatar.
I don't even really remember the cover of this movie. Vaguely remember seeing Emilio Estevez and Mick Jagger. I don't even know if I saw Rene Russo's name on it, because I don't know if she was as popular at that point. But yeah, I don't know. It does not ring a bell at all, and I'm surprised you're shocked I don't know it after you just described it to me.
Mick Jagger is really fun in it. He's having a lot of fun.
Sure.
But you want to really have fun watching Free Jack. Imagine the Mick Jagger as portrayed by John Mulaney in his stand-up special in this movie. Just trying to imagine him as an acting partner. That's got to be hilarious.
That's got to be. I mean, I haven't seen that stand-up.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. But you are a rock god, and now here you are going to another field. How do you act? Are you that arrogant?
He's been pretty good in movies. I don't know how he is behind the scenes, but like The Man from Elysian Fields is an amazing movie that nobody's seen that he was great in. He was great just last year in The Burnt Orange Prophecy, which again is another movie that nobody saw, but he was really great in it. When he chooses to be in a movie, he's really, he's just so charismatic that maybe it's just being Mick Jagger makes him good. I don't know, but he's just that level of charismatic.
Yeah, and even on Saturday Night Live, I always thought he was good. Excuse me, but and I think he is probably more down to earth than you would think he'd be.
Not based on what I've heard. Not based on what I heard from John Mulaney's stand-up. He portrays him as just being completely out of touch.
Well, I'm sure you're a little out of touch, but there's just the other day, Mick Jagger's in a small town bar. He just walked in and nobody knew it was him. And he just kind of hung out there. So that on Instagram.
Wow.
So,
just a completely nothing aside, just has apropos of nothing, but Betty White, passed away recently. There was a wonderful story today, how this Wisconsin bar is paying tribute to her.
Mm-hmm.
This Wisconsin bar that she actually went to back in like the early 80s after attending her husband's funeral. She went to this local bar and had a beer. And they have this tradition at this bar where if you want to buy a beer for somebody, you just write their name on a little chalkboard. And the next time they come in, they've got a beer waiting for them. And you pay for it, of course. And the beer's just waiting for them when they come in. And they set up a thing where you could buy Betty White a beer after that encounter in the early 80s. And she had like 40 beers waiting for her at this bar. And now they're going to continue that tradition. But now anytime anybody buys Betty White a beer, it goes to a local charity.
Yeah, and I think it's an animal charity too, her favorite charity, if I remember reading it right. I don't know exactly what it is off the top of my head. But yeah, that's very cool.
She's inspired a lot of charity, which is pretty great. Also, the resurgence of the name Betty.
Yeah, that is true. And just flat out hilarious in any era.
Yeah.
Any type of comedy, from as filthy as it gets or as clean, she can do it all. True. Just fantastic.
The only thing worth watching in Lake Placid is Betty White. and even in the Proposal, she's stealing scenes from both Sandra Bullock and Ryan Reynolds in that movie.
Yeah, she Ben Afflecked all over that
movie. New T-shirt, just Ben Afflecking everywhere. Jeff, figure out how to design that and get back to me.
That's too much like fracking to me. I don't know why. It doesn't really sound like it at all, but that's what pops in my head. Next week, there's quite a bit. I don't know if it's any good. Scream, the new Scream comes out to theaters. The Legend of La Llorona. Belle, The Pink Cloud. The Curse of La Patasola. I can't.
Patasola, I think it is.
A Cops and Robbers Story. Sex Appeal on Hulu. The Free Fall and The Surprise Visit.
And I will already have a review of Sex Appeal already on our Facebook page, and I'll have reviews of The Pink Cloud, Free Fall, and the Legend of La Llorona. No, the Curse of something La Llorona will be
on The Legend.
Yeah,
the Curse. I think of that was a couple years ago.
And then last year there's just a movie called La Llorona.
Right. It's like every January there's another.
Yeah. Stop trying to make La Llorona happen.
Is Sex Appeal any good? Any of those movies any good? I just know that one's on Hulu. It was on Hulu. So.
I would say the one to watch is The Pink Cloud, but again, it's a Brazilian sci-fi movie, so nobody's going to watch it.
All right. Our classic is the original Scream. In 1992, a movie called A Gnome Named Norm came out.
That is a legendarily bad movie. Like every bad movie podcast has done a piece on A Gnome Named Norm.
Does that mean I have to watch it?
It's entirely up to you. I'm just saying that every bad movie podcast has done that movie.
And then there's Juice. I remember that cover. I've never seen it though. But yeah, that is our show. If you want to be a Patreon supporter, head over to patreon.com/criticspod to help support the podcast. Don't forget to rate and review our show on Apple Podcasts. Let us know you did it. We'll read your review on the air and send the next person to do it. We'll send a copy of a 4K Blu-ray of I Spit on Your Grave.
Which you don't have to watch. It's just more of a memorial of our episode than anything else.
But it's movie aside, and even the movie, I thought the conversation was good, but the rest of the movies in it are really bad. But the package is really cool. It's a well put together package.
Yeah.
So if nothing else, it's like a $70 or $80 value. So, but I guess it's only worth as much as you'll pay for it. So anyway, let's head over to Flickchart and knock some of that out before we go home. Or, you know what I mean? Dick Tracy, James and the Giant Peach.
I couldn't care less. Which one do you like?
I mean, my age group would have been more the Dick Tracy than James and the Giant Peach, but they're both probably equally as bad, so I'm just going to go for my generation.
Fair enough.
The 6-Day State Fair.
I've never seen State Fair.
6-Day
La Dolce Vita. Absolutely. Extraordinary film.
The Diary of a Teenage Girl.
I've never seen Child Behind the Lines.
Diary of a Teenage Girl and her movie The Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
It's The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Diary of a Teenage Girl is a great movie, though.
Inside Llewyn Davis, Escape from New York.
Inside Llewyn Davis. People need to talk about that movie.
Favorite movie of 2013, I think.
Such a great movie.
Absolutely. Rosemary's Baby, The Stranger.
The Stranger.
Yeah, I think so. Me, Myself, and Irene, Inside Job.
Inside Job. Is that a
documentary?
I can't remember what movie that is.
Let's get rid of it.
I always saw that poster. I'm sure I should know what it is. I've never heard of whatever that is.
Me, Myself, and Irene, The Princess Bride.
The Princess Bride.
Is Inside Llewyn Davis the Coen Brothers?
Yes.
Yeah, that was my introduction to what's his name?
Oscar Isaac.
Right now, Oscar Isaac.
Yeah.
And then Adam Driver, even. That was my introduction to Adam Driver, too. I know he's been around, but that's something about that movie.
And Carey Mulligan, too. And
Oh, yeah. All of them. That's probably the first I've seen any of those people in. And it was early on in our podcast days, too, so that was a lot of great. Return of the Living Dead, Rave to the Grave.
Never heard of it.
No way you've seen that. Splash, Iron Lady.
Splash.
And the only reason I say there's no reason you've seen it was 2006. Return of the Living Dead. What the fuck? The Amazing Panda Adventure is a movie I've never heard of. The Net with the Unabomber on it.
That's weird. That's a weird poster for the Net, but that's not the same Net. It's not, because that movie came out in the 90s.
You're right. Now I feel better. I haven't seen it once, so I'm just... The Hunger Games or Cars.
That's tough. Wow. Man.
That's tough, but I don't feel any loyalty to either one either.
Yeah. I think Hunger Games got better as it went along. So I'm going to pick Cars, because Cars is better than the other two Cars movies.
So that's true. I'll be with you on that. Q&A, Bad Boys.
Bad Boys. It's just more fun. Because Q&A is not fun at all.
Is Arrival. It's a Wonderful Life gets smart.
It's a Wonderful Life, I guess. I have no love for It's a Wonderful Life. I know it's a classic. It's never done anything for me.
I haven't watched it in years, so maybe one of these purposes will go back to it. When was the last time you've seen it?
I mean, I see it every year.
You watch it every time?
That's probably why I'm tired of it.
I mean, I see it around. I just don't watch it.
I don't watch every year, but every year somebody does something on it that I'll watch. And I'm like, yeah, okay, I get it.
And he is so good, Jimmy Stewart. Everything else that it's like
so incredible, yeah.
And everybody thinks that's the best movie.
Like you're crazy because you haven't seen his Giant Rabbit movie. Philadelphia Story, Rope,
everything he's done.
Everything he's ever done. Mr. Smith, like he's just done a lot of stuff that's way better than that.
Lego Movie, Star Trek Insurrection.
Lego Movie.
The Bridge on the River Kwai, The Fantastic Four, 1994.
It's the Bridge on the River Kwai, of course, but the 94 Fantastic Four is hilarious.
Is that the same one, or
that's the Corman? 94 is the Corman one. The unreleased. Yeah.
When's the Jessica Alba one?
Like 2001.
Too, wasn't it? Oh,
no, it was early 2000s.
Candyman Bedazzled. 21 Candyman.
Yeah. Candyman, I guess. Bedazzled is just such a nothing movie.
Darkman, The Great Gatsby, 2013.
It's Great Gatsby for me. I think DiCaprio's great in that movie.
Yeah, Darkman's just kind of, I didn't mind it. I like something. Euro Trip, Joe versus Volcano.
I love both of these movies. They're both not like all-time classics or anything, but they're like both of them are just so easy to watch. It's Joe versus the Volcano for me, just for nostalgia.
Kick-Ass 2, Requiem for a Dream.
Requiem for a Dream.
Yeah. The Kid, Bicentennial Man.
The Kid.
You think he was that big of a dick on that movie?
Probably.
When did that start?
Probably around the time that Kevin Smith worked with him, I'm thinking, was when people really figured it out.
Well, that's when they started figuring it out. When did he start doing it? That's what I want.
Yeah. It's a good question. He was still acting as late as Looper. Like he was still, trying as late as Looper.
Well, every now and then he pops up and tries, but for the most part, I mean, it's weird. Like he'll jump on an M. Night movie or a Robert Rodriguez movie and try. Even if the movie sucks, so just show up and do what he's told. Even that Edward Norton movie, he showed up for a couple of days and listened to Edward Norton. But 90% of the time, it's some bullshit straight to video movie that I don't know. I hate it.
Yeah.
Godzilla 98,
Coraline.
Size doesn't matter. Voltaire Scream.
Voltaire is a brilliant movie. I like Scream, but I mean,
Oh
Volver is
yeah,
brilliant.
Scream's great. Lost in Translation, The Outlaw of Jackie Wales.
Lost in Translation.
Great. That was my point. We talked about Outlaw of Jackie Wales. Was that good? It should be like we should be deciding which one's better. Like if that was Unforgiven, that'd be a harder decision for me. Streetcar Named Desire, Birth.
Do you know what Birth is?
I know there's a scene when a poor kid in a bathtub with a kid.
Yeah,
like
yeah. Her reborn husband and the child in the body of a child. Really fucking stupid movie. really ridiculously like creepy concept, and yeah, just terrible. But yeah, it's Streetcar, obviously.
Deadpool, Speed Racer.
Deadpool, but I love Speed Racer. I do. I think Speed Racer is awesome.
Yeah. Inside Out, Waiting.
Inside Out.
Yeah.
Waiting just doesn't age well.
No, and it wasn't good enough at the time.
True.
To stand out like an old school or whatever.
Yeah.
The Jerk, Jumper.
The Jerk.
Strangers on a Train, The Red Shoes.
Strangers on a Train, but The Red Shoes is pretty fantastic.
I'm now pronouncing Chuck and Larry, Creed.
Creed by a lot.
Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, The Right Stuff.
The Right Stuff.
Ooh. I'm going out on this one. I now pronounce you Chuck and Larry and the 1998 Godzilla.
I'm going old school. I'm going to go Fishing with Gandhi.
Oh, that was fun. All right. I will try to get as many in as I can next week. It'll be fun, though. I'm looking forward to talking about Scream.
Yeah, it'll be interesting.
When's the last time you watched that? It's been a while.
It's been years since I watched the original, yeah. The most recent one I watched was Scream 3, and I really hated Scream 3 so much. I fucking hate that movie.
I really like the first one when it came out. I just wonder if it's still this fresh.
I wonder if it'll still hold up, yeah. Just
hope it does.
That opening scene is just so shocking and so surprising and so smart that it really set the tone that I don't think the movie could fail even after that.
But what if that's all it is?
Yeah, that's the question.
Find out next week.
Yeah.
All right.
See ya.
All right, bye.